So the goal is of this meeting is originally it started because I discovered that an old friend of ours was a TiddlyWiki fan, and I had no idea that for the last few years she's been using TiddlyWiki for all her work, and she's a database systems administrator. And I'd actually sat down and had dinner with her without realising that she was a TiddlyWiki enthusiast. And that made me think that there must be other TiddlyWiki enthusiasts in Oxford. So the main purpose of the meeting was to try and discover if that was true and to start getting people together. And the hope is that it'll help me to understand how to get TiddlyWiki to a broader audience. So I think there must be the latent, so happily there are people in Oxford who use TiddlyWiki all the time, but there must be a big population of people here who would benefit from using TiddlyWiki because they're doing the kinds of things that the people who use TiddlyWiki do. So I'm kind of hoping that we can, in a grassrootsy way, encourage other people to use it. And part of that is just having the meetings regularly. I want to have meetings every month, and we could have them. We can carry on having them here. They could be in a pub. And I don't care really whether there's 4 people or 40 people. It's just interesting for me to learn more about so from people who are already using TiddlyWiki, what they think about it, and from people who might use TiddlyWiki to learn more about what they're looking for. To start with, we'll go to TiddlyWiki.com. In fact, I think I'm going to do it in Chrome for boring reasons. So when you come to TiddlyWiki.com, it looks a little bit like a normal website, but some weird differences. It scrolls like a normal website, but the sections of it are divided up into much more explicit chunks than you'd typically find on a website. And what it's presenting is this idea that the information inside the website is cut up into small chunks that are then linked together. So if I find a link here, for instance, and click on it, it opens the target of the link. So you can see over here a list of all of the items that are displayed, and as I click on them, it scrolls between them. So you've got this idea of a big bag of cards, of index cards, of which some are on the screen, and I can summon other ones by clicking on the links. So as I do so, I'm kind of unfolding my own version of a story, because if I see things that I don't understand, I can click on them to get additional details to kind of drill down. And that's really the main thing that TiddlyWiki does, is it says information is easier to manage if instead of making it one long stream like you would get if you started writing it out in Word, if you cut it up into small chunks and focus on the links between the chunks. I've reason to believe now that for some people it helps them structure their thoughts, because they can reflect the same kind of structures that they feel and see in their head directly into TiddlyWiki. So by thinking, often we see boxes and lines in our heads, kind of connections between concepts and things, and TiddlyWiki gives you a way of expressing those relationships. And that's hard in Word. I can record a whole list of facts by jotting them down in a sequence, but it's much harder to express.
You have to keep turning the page, whereas with this you can just get there. I think that's
yes, and jump, and you don't. If I know to jump 200 pages ahead in a Word document or a physical book is a kind of disorientating process. And this is trying to say, well, actually, interruption is the norm. That instead of jumping around through a sequence, let's optimize for being interrupted, for following up a footnote. So in TiddlyWiki, you could say that everything is a footnote, even. And all that the display is trying to do is to make that kind of proposition clear, try and make these things look distinct and look like cards. People already know how to click on links because the web's full of links, and so the links are blue and open. You click on them in the expected way. TiddlyWiki adds to that the idea of tags, which again is hopefully familiar from lots of other products and services, but the idea that you can apply a list of tags to an item, and by clicking on that tag I can see a list of the other items with the same tag. So you get built in two slightly different ways of handling navigation. One where I've explicitly written links, so I'm kind of forcing the relationship as part of the narrative. Also in the form of tags, where I've got something that feels more like a database. It's kind of a list of things with this characteristic. But it lets me jump around the content in quite an interesting way. So having found that there's tiddlers about the underlying concepts of TiddlyWiki, I can easily jump around and see the other concepts that link together with the one I started with. So the thing I don't think I said explicitly is we call these chunks of information tiddlers, which is a ludicrous name, like TiddlyWiki is a ludicrous name. And it came about for the best possible reason, that it was kind of an accident. When I did the first version, I called it TiddlyWiki thinking it was funny. And then I think programmers are very apt to parse words like that, to try and, not parse, to make different participles, parts of speech out of the words that you invent. So having got a TiddlyWiki, then writing code was at the point where everybody gets. I think when you've got this elemental thing inside your program, and so you call it a node or an object, and everything in your system is going to inherit from this one master type of object. And I hate the way that therefore you end up writing code full of these anodyne words that don't really that don't carry much meaning. Node, object, item, those kinds of things. But a tiddler, when you write tiddler as a variable name, it's completely clear what it refers to. So it was kind of to clarify the code that I started calling them tiddlers. And then surprisingly found that most people quite liked the idea of a tiddler. I mean, those that understood what it was. There's also a history of people thinking that it might be a kind of rude joke that they don't fully understand, but it's not a rude joke, and in English a tiddler is just a small fish. So, so far we've only been clicking on links on a TiddlyWiki that's already full, if you see what I mean. This TiddlyWiki is sitting on the internet, but now I'll show you how to start using it. So we go to Getting Started and download an empty TiddlyWiki. So you can conceive that what we're looking at the moment is a TiddlyWiki that's got lots of tiddlers in it. There's a list of all of them. And if I download the empty version, I'll put it. So I'm downloading the empty version to my downloads folder, and I did that by clicking the download empty button. And now this will be different on Windows, but again, find the file and then open it. And now I've got a blank TiddlyWiki, so if I go to the list here of all of the things, there's nothing in it, and I can start to create things. So let's make an entry for Joe Blogs, and we'll say that Joe Blogs is a person, and he's also an MP. Why not? Joe Blogs lives, probably lies actually, given that he's a politician. So what I've done there is typed a title for a new tiddler, given it 2 tags, and then I've typed some content. So it's roughly equivalent to giving a name to a Word document, typing some contents to it, and probably in Word there might be a way of adding tags. And now when I've having done that, Joe Blogs appears as a link, and so does Westminster, and that happens for different reasons. Joe Blogs is what's called a wiki word, where we've mixed upper and lower case by smashing the words together, and that automatically gets made into a link. In the case of Westminster, I put it in double square brackets, which forces it to be a link, even if it's not in camel case, or if I do something like.
So one is automatic and the other is forced.
Yeah, exactly that. So I made a link out of Christmas Party, even though there's a space in it. And you may notice that Joe Blogs is not in italics, but Westminster and Christmas Party are. And that's because they're missing. So this is, TiddlyWiki keeps track of the fact I've got a TiddlyWiki called, a Tiddler called Joe Blogs. But also down here it keeps track of the fact that I've got missing tiddlers called Christmas Party and Westminster. And this turns out to be quite useful, because some of the time when you're formulating thoughts, you need to structure those thoughts as part of writing them down, and part of it is remembering everything. So say if I'm taking notes on my meeting, I might say go to the red project, and I've written it as a wiki word so that it'll become a link. So in each case, I've referred to things that don't exist yet, and that prompts me that I've got to come back and fill them in. And so when I click on it, I can open it and say, stuff about it. And now it's disappeared from the missing link list because I've actually created it. So it's a kind of, it becomes like a to-do list that you don't have to think about and maintain. You don't have to go, oh, I can go and cross that off the to-do list. You're just continually aware of the things that you've referred to but need to come back and fill in. So at this point, I've made a number of changes. I've added a bunch of tiddlers, but I haven't actually saved the changes. So if I were to press refresh in the browser at the moment, all that information that I typed, because it's just held in the browser's memory, would disappear. So TiddlyWiki lets us save changes by downloading a new copy of the wiki. So when I click the download button, it prompts me for a download location. If I choose the same file that I opened originally, now it'll prompt me to replace it, and the end result is that when I refresh, I'll get that newly saved content. So there's the stuff about the Red project, and there's the stuff about Joe Blogs. So that process of saving changes is a little bit inconvenient. I'll do it again to demonstrate how inconvenient it is. I had to click the mouse once, twice, oh no, that was 3 times, wasn't it? 4 times in order to do a save. But the great thing is that it'll work on almost any browser on the planet. And unlike Google Docs or Tumblr or Facebook, it'll work.
You've got to make an automatic script to do that.
It's funny you should ask that. Yeah. Because it is such pain that only on Firefox we've got an extension called TiddlyFox. So Firefox has this extraordinary feature that you can add extensions to it that make quite fundamental changes to it. TiddlyFox lets TiddlyWiki save changes all by itself without all of that kerfuffle.
Do I take it that's not possible to be done in Chrome as well, where you've got the Chrome extensions.
Sadly, Chrome extensions don't get file access without doing really horrible things. But there are Chrome extensions that have done those horrible things, and there is a chance that we'll be able to inherit the horrible things that they've done and use them for our own ends. But I hear you, because Chrome is rightly a popular browser and nice in lots of ways.
I think also, I'm just thinking of other people using that. The population which is using Chrome is quite extensive, and I think it would be a nice lead on for quite a few people. If it just worked and you had that save function, I think you'd find people would probably use it more. Yeah.
Well, so in Firefox, it's incredibly easy to. Writing this extension took me 2 days and simple to discover the APIs. But Chrome, you have to write an np API plugin, which is an old C thing, and then compile it for each platform. But anyway, I'll show you in a second some other solutions. So now, because I've got TiddlyFox installed in Firefox, when I open a TiddlyWiki document from my hard drive, it asks me whether I want to use TiddlyFox with it. And if I say OK, now I'll fill in some information about Westminster. Is it Hive? I remember the line now. And now when I press Save Changes, it just says Save Wiki in the corner, and it's done it instantly. So this, although sadly it's not Chrome, although it's only Firefox, it does give us the user experience that you'd expect from a kind of normal software application. A single click to save changes. So again, this will work when you're offline, and you can store the TiddlyWiki document on a thumb drive or in Dropbox. So basically anything that you already know about how to look after a Word document or how to take care of a precious photograph, you can apply to this. Let me show you another interesting feature is encryption, where I can set a password, and I'll set the password, and now subsequent saves, when I reload the wiki, it prompts me for a password before it unlocks the content. And so because there are if we look at the page source, so this is looking at the text inside the TiddlyWiki file, you can see there's a chunk called encrypted store area that contains all that gobbledygook. So that's the peerless words that we wrote about Joe Blogs and Red Project, but cryptographically scrambled. So that at the moment is the way that I think probably most people use TiddlyWiki. And I can ask James, you've been using it with TiddlyFox, haven't you?
Yeah.
And how's that worked out for you?
I like it. Well, I always used Chrome before, so
you're being forced to use
I've been forced to use Firefox, which I don't mind because I'm used to it now. So I just have.
Do you find it's helpful to have the TiddlyWiki in a different browser than you're doing your regular browsing in?
A little. Well, I guess I'm used to it now, so I tend to put it on my kind of second screen. I bring up Firefox, I got my notepad, and I work on my first screen. And as I want to make notes, I just go across to that, so just leave it open. Because
actually, the kind of weird advantage I find of this way of working is I'm be doing browsing in Chrome, but then I know that an Alt tab will always take me straight back to the TiddlyWiki. Yeah. Another Alt tab will take me, and just in the annoying way the Mac works, there would be no easy way of doing that with a single key press if I had TiddlyWiki running in a separate Chrome window.
I found it worth it to have TiddlyFox. I think I get fed up of having to do the 4 clicks.
No, it's a joke. But it's incredibly useful, I find, to be able to walk up to a random computer that you can't install Firefox on or TiddlyFox, and still to be able to work sort of in extremis. Sure. So, and what other did you look at other services like TiddlyWiki before? Is this the?
No, because I've always thought there must be better ways of keeping notes and things, and managing your life. But I've never really looked into it. But then it was only after you gave a presentation on the Oxford Geek Nights, I thought, oh, that sounds like it could be the answer to my problems. And yeah, that's why I went with this one.
Well, I'm glad because normally you only get 4 or 5 minutes to talk in those things, so it was quite good that it came across at all. So let's take it a bit further then. We've got the basic TiddlyWiki product, and I drew a diagram. Oops, sorry, which is on a piece of paper. Oh, that's the wrong piece of paper. So my diagram looks like that. That what it's saying, you don't need to see this in detail really, is that there's TiddlyWiki in the middle, and then arrayed around the outside there are a number of different ways of using it. So we looked at using it in a bog standard browser, slightly inconvenient, works in any browser, almost any desktop browser on the planet. Then if you're prepared to put up with using TiddlyFox, there we've got a slightly better user experience. And what you can also do is store your TiddlyWikis in the cloud. So if I go to TiddlySpot, TiddlySpot is a service that lets you store TiddlyWikis, kind of like Dropbox, at a URL that you can visit. It's currently configured around the old version of TiddlyWiki. So if I'll create a new site called Oxtwig 2, and I'll give it a top secret password, which is weirdly the same number of letters as Oxtwig 2, and then it'll create me, assuming nobody else has grabbed that desirable address. Right, so now it's created me a wiki called Oxtwig 2. And this next step is only necessary because TiddlyWiki 5 is new and hasn't been properly integrated. But now what I can do is go to the empty version of TiddlyWiki on the web, fill in some details, and now when I save changes, it's saving it up to TiddlySpot. And now subsequently, if I go to Oxtwig 2 on TiddlySpot, if it's working, there's my wiki. So now,
so you can send anyone the URL and they can choose.
Exactly, yeah. And I need to re-enter the password for annoying reasons, but that no doubt makes my life more secure.
Just once?
Just once, and then it'll be, it's logged in the browser, but in a, yeah, it's logged in the browser, but not in a very secure way. So now I can, say, create a new entry. Oh, actually, rather than doing that, let's go back to the missing list. Oh, I started with a blank one. Oh yeah, okay, so that's quite interesting. So now I can, to get the tiddlers that were in the Oxtwig demo TiddlyWiki, I can just drag the file in. Oh, no I can't. Let me try that in Firefox. Drag and drop is one of the things that's very non-standard and different between different browsers. So there's a number of things that, well, not that. Oh, it's because it's encrypted, of course. So if I, at the risk of confusing everybody, if in here I clear the password, resave it. And now if you remember, we're back on TiddlySpot, and now I can drag the file, and there are the tiddlers that I created before. And if I click save, it'll be saved to TiddlySpot.
Can you
And
do that again?
do the dragging.
Where did you go to get the stuff to drag it from?
I went back to the Finder
To find it.
and found the file.
Yeah.
And in fact, that drag and drop is kind of pervasive. You can drag and drop images, including, gosh, I'm not sure what that photograph is. Oh, that's like
And it's just using the title as the main.
yes, and I can change that title.
What about text? Can you drop a zip file?
Yeah, if I dropped a text file, if I got a text file, I can make a text file. Yeah, if you dropped a text file, it would just come in as a
The content.
yeah. So I was finding a text file. Oh, because right. Right. Finally found a text file to drag in, and
Screen's blank.
The Gerner.
that's better. Right. So and then obviously you can go in there and edit it. So very laboriously, we're stepping around the outside of the circle. We're seeing how you can work with TiddlyWiki locally on your own drive. You can be confident that it's private, nobody else can see it. If you're not on the internet, it's completely and utterly private, apart from the new spooky NSA sound carried bugs. We've seen how you can put a wiki on TiddlySpot, and by doing that you can make it available to everybody. But what I can also do, of course, is encrypt it on TiddlySpot. So if I set a password, save changes, and now anybody else, oh, I don't know why I did that wrong. I think I just didn't give it time to confirm. And so now with an encrypted wiki on TiddlySpot, I can access it wherever I go in the world without having to carry anything with me. But anybody else stumbling across it won't be able to access it. But I appear to have broken something.
We just have to remember
You have to remember the yeah, you have to remember the name of the wiki and the password. Okay, so the third way of running it is very new. That I've been working on a desktop application for TiddlyWiki. So this guy, in the case of the Mac, appears as a normal application. You install it by downloading a zip file and you drag it to your applications folder. And when you run it, you get a... Oh no, you get a terrible problem because the screen resolution... Okay, bear with me a moment. So instead I'll run it in Windows, and we can make Windows be full screen. Yeah, so I've done that neat trick of turning my Mac into a Windows box. So on Windows I'm running an app called nw.exe, and you get a main window up that's a list of TiddlyWiki documents. So I can browse and open a TiddlyWiki document. It opens in its own window, and I can do the same kind of stuff as before. And press save changes. And if I close the window and, okay, I have to browse for it again. If I reopen it, right. Right, if I reopen it and look in recent changes, you can see the change that I just made. So TiddlyDesktop basically puts this on the same footing as Microsoft Word or anything. It's just a normal app on your computer. You can't accidentally navigate to a new web page in the same tab and disturb it or anything. It's not sort of ephemeral like a web page. It turns it into something that's sits there and runs all the time, even when a website crashes Chrome. It also makes it possible to do a bunch of things that would be impossible for TiddlyWiki in a standalone file. Mainly working with separate files so that you can split your tiddlers across individual files and then combine them for display in the browser. So that gives us, for end users, hopefully the easiest possible way of using TiddlyWiki at the expense of more setup. And I guess plenty of Mac and Windows users don't know how to install applications, but assuming you know how to install an application, then you're up and running without any further configuration. So,
Can you get that in the App Store?
No, it'll never go in the App Store because it's based on an open source framework, which it seems that Apple hasn't yet allowed any other applications based on the same framework to be in the App Store. But they have their own very peculiar reasons about.
What framework is it?
Node WebKit, sorry, which is now misnamed, of course, because it was it's based on Chromium, which was WebKit based at the time, but is now Blink. And it basically, all it does is gives you browser windows with no Chrome, plus within the JavaScript of the browser windows you can call all the Node.js APIs. And literally that's almost everything you need to know apart from 2 pages of A4 to make it sing and dance, because it's the combination of two things that are already quite familiar. And so things like the way this dialog is, that's an HTML file input control. It's not some funky custom library. So now let me.
So it's the same code for all platforms?
Yeah. So they ship basically they ship an application in for Mac, Windows, and 32-bit and 64-bit Linux. You drop your bits into the bundle of that app, or into each bundle of that application, zip them up, and off you go. Highly recommended. So I'll just finish with showing you a couple of things that kind of, well, maybe this is one of the things that might make TiddlyWiki scary, but this isn't done by me. This is a guy in Holland, Ton Gerner, who's been working with TiddlyWiki for 3 months, 4 months or so, but was also a user of TiddlyWiki Classic before and kind of an enthusiast for it. And he's added a bunch of features. So when I'm clicking that arrow there, all that gubbins off to the right disappears. There's a whole new toolbar up here with a variety of functions. Like there, I can hop into full screen and hop back out again. Lots of additional buttons here. Lots of options for how the screen is laid out. And that's kind of one of the interesting and useful things about TiddlyWiki, that not everybody wants to customize it to that degree. But the fact that those customizations are there means that when you start to use TiddlyWiki, you can feel more confident that you're not going to be hemmed in by the product itself, because you can see at a glance that it's kind of plastic, that people have been able to change it and adapt it to their needs.
So who would that be aimed at? Like, is it for people that want more from it than you get out of the box but can't customize it that much themselves?
Yeah. And there's another guy who's got a similar thing going on, where he's giving some examples and techniques and so on, and funky things like bookmarklets. And so some of his stuff is quite basic, just how to display a tag in the right colors and so on in that case. And some of it is a whole walkthrough. So he's got this way of building up quizzes in TiddlyWiki. So he writes quizzes using a special kind of nomenclature, and then okay, so you do that to see the answers.
So you said the future of TiddlySpace was uncertain. What about the future of TiddlySpot?
Oh well, TiddlySpot is a much less ambitious operation. So it's a PHP server run by two brothers in Australia, Simon and Daniel Baird, who have been running it since about 2008, and it just ticks over as I think as a not even evening and weekend project anymore. I don't think they have to do very much to it. So whereas TiddlySpace is a much more kind of conventional, ambitious online service with a database and so on. So TiddlySpot stores everything in the file system on its host. So there's relatively little maintenance for them to do. But TiddlySpace is more conventional in that regard.
So being able to get it online is quite an advantage.
Yes, and we'd like... Well, the thing about onlineness, I'm sorry, so I'm now getting technical, but there's a movement to explore the advantages of apps that decouple the storage from the application. So I think it's incredibly useful to be able to put TiddlyWiki on servers and do stuff in the clouds with it. But more useful still is to be able to put it on a bunch of different servers. So in the technical community, you get different people are comfortable with different kinds of servers. Some people want TiddlyWiki to run on PHP, some of them want it to run on Google App Engine and so on. And TiddlyWiki benefits from that kind of richness and profusion, I think, because it makes the ecosystem bigger and suit more people.
I feel like your users you might be trying to attract probably don't care about the backend. They probably care most about convenience. Convenience.
Yeah. And I think for most people, Dropbox feels like the best answer if they're in that category at the moment, because you're inheriting a, well, mostly quite reliable service. You can do public stuff and private stuff with Dropbox. There's for TiddlyWiki.
Why would it seem easier than setting up a TiddlySpot thing? You couldn't share it.
Because then you can link your TiddlyWiki to the other stuff that's in your Dropbox. So it keeps all your bits together, which I think is quite handy.
The people are used to going up and signing up on a web page and getting to go.
And hopefully there might be more of them. Whereas going with this unhosted.
So are you talking about keeping it in the cloud instead of...
I've got mine on one of these web pages.
So that's
TiddlySpace.
we should have a look actually. This is Will's TiddlySpace. Do you want to walk us through it?
Not really. Maybe you should just click around and see where you get to. It's very terse notes, which are designed just for me. So if I come across something I know I'm going to forget, or I'm quite likely to forget, then it's very handy to write it down. And I find that I've found the right level of notes, which mean that next time I come around, I will pick it up much quicker than the first time.
It's interesting. I mean, I do a lot of bookmarking, and I'll find something of interest, and I'll just throw it somewhere, and then potentially look at it later on. Whereas this could be an interesting method for having that sort of facility, but having much better linking, and information linking and tagging as well, which I think will work quite well.
This works very well for me, because whenever I come across a link between two different things, I see it in my head as a tree. It starts from that page,
Yes.
and the tree goes out, but I can at any point link between branches.
Yes, it feels like you could have done this in OPML or in Dave Weiner's outline, I think. Well, it'll get confusing. So the TiddlyWiki equivalent is dropbox.tiddlywiki.com. Okay, and it's not working. What is that? I think the network is say exactly the same deal as Fargo. TiddlyWiki in the sky would like to access my Dropbox. I say OK, and then that's showing me all the stuff in my Dropbox, and somewhere there's a TiddlyWiki file. Yes. So I can create a thing, and now if I save changes, it'll save it to my Dropbox. And I will update that to work with TiddlyWiki 5 as well. So the attraction of that is being able to have a URL, it's a thing that's on the web, or it can be on the web, but it's also now that'll be automatically synced to my machine courtesy of Dropbox, and I can just walk up, like TiddlySpot, I can walk up to any machine on the internet and do that stuff.
Seems like a convenient way to work.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's annoying about it is it basically works the same way as TiddlySpot, where you save the entire file in one go. So the problem that you have, if you're on a slow connection and your file's getting into the high megabytes, that'll start to be a nuisance. What I'd like to be able to do is to save individual tiddlers as separate files, and yes, it's a pain in the neck to do with the current Dropbox APIs.
Has anyone managed to, well, rather, has anyone used, to your knowledge, TiddlyWiki with BitTorrent sync?
It's interesting you asked that. I'm interested in that. Yes.
What would that be?
So BitTorrent sync is something, say you have two computers, a home one and a work one. You put BitTorrent sync on both and it syncs all your files peer-to-peer. So it's like Dropbox without the centralized server or the pricing.
Which is a big deal. This might be quite a good place to start. That TiddlyWiki is it's like a note-keeping system that you can use on a computer, and it offers, what's different or unusual about it is the degree of control that it offers you. It's not like using Facebook where you're engaging in a bargain with a company that's kind of giving you services for free. TiddlyWiki is open source, and when you use it, or you can use it independently on your own computer. But if what we were just about to do was, James was going to show us what he's been doing with TiddlyWiki, and it might be quite interesting to see that to start with, because it'll show you what people actually use it for and why, before we get sucked too far into the kind of technicalities of it. While James is finding that, this is the chap who just left, Will Rogers. This is his TiddlyWiki notebook. So he uses this for his work. So he works for a company called Diamond, and here he records individual bits of information that he's come across that he knows he's not going to remember. And this being technical stuff, it's quite arcane bits of material. And as just clicking on his links, you can see it's a bit like having lots of text files. But instead of having, if you had lots of text files and you started opening them, you'd have loads of windows open.
Yeah.
But instead, each chunk of information is opening in place.
So it's a bit like workflowy, but better format for, you know, you can put tables and stuff like that.
And you can have links. So the thing that's really, that's not so easy to do. So in Microsoft Word, you can write a link where you can click on something and it takes you to a different part of the document, but it's a nightmare to do, and people seldom do. And yet, we often think in terms of links. You know, we think of the information in our heads as being kind of linked together.
I use Workflowy for that. But it's not
Oh,
the
yes.
best,
Yes, well, Workflowy is really nice, elegantly done, and I know lots of people who use it too. I think that TiddlyWiki is kind of richer and broader, so people use it for more different things.
Yeah, Workflowy, where I find, you can only put, with that I can see you can put tables and things, different formats.
So James, what's this one?
So this is because I'm learning Arabic, so it was a way of keeping track of.
I used to be able to read it.
I think I still find other languages, it's so beautiful, isn't it?
That's a word.
Just wiki.
Let me, if I open it in Safari. I think that's beautiful. I love the way the TiddlyWiki does this, well, it was fashionable about 2 years ago, it does this shadow thing, where there's a little sort of, oh, you can't see on that screen, oh, you can a little, it's supposed to look like it's engraved with a little white shadow underneath, and it actually looks beautiful on the Arabic writing as well. Okay.
So, yeah, I found it just useful. I found I always end up learning little like nuggets of information, which I'd kind of score on a bit of paper and then promptly lose. And it was a way of just capturing that, and you know, being able to search for it and find things. Especially if you click on one, like there's one that says blog day, like one feedback. So this is from a homework exercise where I had to write like a made-up blog, and so my teacher then assessed it and he'd give me comments. So I found a lot of the comments would be things that you can't find in textbooks, like phrases that don't work. Like I said in my blog, I wandered around the streets, and he's saying that doesn't really work because to him that meant literally I'm wandering around a street continuously. And they're things that you don't really find in textbooks. You know, they tell you all the rules of grammar, but in terms of phrasing and how you could, you know, and like you don't say thinking about, say thinking in, things like this. And so you can capture all these notes and put them in.
So that's very interesting that you've got a mixture, obviously, of English text and Arabic text. I didn't even properly appreciate you could mix them on the same line like that.
It's a pain.
Is it? What do you have to do?
I
use, there's a website called Yamli Keyboard where you can write phonetically in English, and it will write out the equivalent Arabic, which makes it very fast to write it out.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
And then you just copy and paste
and I copy and paste. That's the quickest way. It's really good.
Google Fish.
So
Yeah, and I like the fact you could link, like I made that link to definite, so I can fill in things later. I like that. You know? So I haven't got anything that for like. So, and things I always forget. Like I kept spelling it wrong. So there's two words there. One's the country, and one means train. And
which are exactly the same.
They're not the same. One's,
yeah, no, I can see the difference, but
yeah.
gosh.
And then I put a little note to try and make me remember.
Is there any connection in the language to them, or is it just similar?
No, not that I know of.
Arabic is strange.
Yeah, in a lot of words there are connections. There's this root letter system.
Yeah, Portugal in Arabic is Portugal, which is the same word as orange. Because that's the first time where they saw oranges. And Portuguese. Yeah. That was quite fun.
Wow. Okay, so I think this
in a
is.
lot of countries, the word for orange means apple from China.
Yeah.
Really?
That
is so strange.
Because I went to Iceland and the word and orange juice was apple sin, and I was like, oh, apple juice, and it came with orange juice. And this is not right. And I looked it up, and it's because it's Chinese apple, and it's
That is
it's
so
in
strange.
Nordic countries. That's the word for orange, Chinese apple.
Because you don't get any in Italy. Because you don't get any in Sicily.
So I really like the tag, like the searchable. That's what really attracted me there. Because often I've got lots of paper notes, but of course you think, oh, I just need, what is that? And you end up just searching through pages of paper notes.
So, Raddy, what's James pointing out here is how, as well as we've got like a bunch of cards, each of which has a title and you just jot. So that's kind of equivalent to a Word document with a file name and a body. And the tags have this thing where you can see a list of the other things with the same tag. So it gives you two ways of jumping around, where you're either following the links that he's put into it, that you kind of deliberately put in, or you can follow the structure of the tags. That's pretty neat. And then you can also search. So those are all of the entries that mentioned that, nouns, adjectives, etc.
Can you use MarkDown to format these?
You can.
I saw you had a MarkDown demo that you were dragging in, but it's wiki text.
There's a MarkDown plugin. Okay, so there's the YAML thing. If I...
Because obviously like loads of people use MarkDown now.
Yeah. MarkDown's this system for writing where you use special formatting for bold and italic, which seems lunatic, but what's quite nice about it is when you do formatting in Word, you know how sometimes you copy and paste a paragraph and the formatting's kind of attached to the line, whereas this, all the formatting's visible. And so although you know, people complain that it's not WYSIWYG, they're actually wrong, because WYSIWYG hides information that's that as a writer is quite important.
Just go on hide it, can't you?
Yes, and then you end up with something that's incredibly like this in the first place. So it's sort of, I think now it's becoming clear that the idea of making a text editor that pretends to be a multi-font typewriter is a terrible idea, and that you actually, in the process of writing, you need this other structure that doesn't appear as part of the document. And if you don't have that, then you're condemned to what Word does, just kind of streaming words down a page. But yes, so there is MarkDown integration, and it's a plugin. And at the moment,
plugins actually work. How do you use them?
There's you drag them in. So one of the things that's unusual about TiddlyWiki is how ridiculously customizable it is. So if I take a empty wiki, say, ooh, I just dragged it to the wrong place, sorry. So that's an empty TiddlyWiki that has no plugins in it. But if I want it to have the MarkDown plugin, I just drag the MarkDown plugin into it and then save changes and restart.
How can you do that on something like, this may be a bit of a weird question, but on TiddlyWiki Edit, where I can't drag and drop when I'm using my iPad?
Yes.
I found that with a few things. And it's all very simple in theory, but I can't actually make it work on here because...
It's easier on a laptop.
Yeah, no, there's a bunch of...
I don't have a laptop.
Do you know how I got over the TW Edit
problem?
Right.
So I wanted to work on here.
Oh, did you hear what Javid said?
No.
Do you know how I got over the TW Edit problem?
No.
I bought a laptop.
So you need to persuade Javid to buy you a laptop.
No. We've got a solution.
So what is this meetup for?
So, well, it's a... TiddlyWiki is really quite old. I invented it in 2004, and it grew quite quickly to being a popular open source project. So since then, I've been working with people around the world on kind of writing it. So when you, this is where the development of it happens on GitHub, and there's a big online community of people sort of talking about it and so on. So it's like lots of open source software, it's just kind of part of the furniture of the internet, I guess. But the thing that really surprised me was to discover that a friend of ours who we'd known for quite a while and I had dinner with and stuff was a TiddlyWiki user without me realising. And I'd sat down and talked to her without it ever coming up that she used TiddlyWiki. And she was really surprised and taken aback when she discovered that I was responsible for it. And it made me think, therefore, that there must be other people in Oxford who use TiddlyWiki. And so for me, making it, although I spend all my time on the internet talking to people about TiddlyWiki, I also really like meeting people. I mean, it's much more interesting to meet people in person to find out what they're doing with it. So it's an enthusiast meetup, but I hope that we can also proselytize. So, I mean, this isn't really for me to say, but for other TiddlyWiki users, that my feeling is that more people could use it. And there's things that it could be easier to use, it could be less complicated and so on, that make more people use it. But the big thing I can do to help other people to explore it is to kind of draw out the testimony of people who already use it, if you see what I mean. And so sharing tips and experiences and so on. And the plan is I'm going to keep having the meetings every month, even if it's just me and Piers or me and James. But I think if you make something like this regular and kind of keep doing it, then it becomes easier and easier to hold it. And as I say, it's fun for me to meet TiddlyWiki people and find out more about what they're doing. And you know, open source software is it's a big part of the internet, but it's not a big part of people's lives yet. But I think
I've used open source, you know, whatever the free version is, and a few other things. But yeah, it could be used very more.
I feel ideologically that the time is right as well now. That there's things like Twitter and Instagram that provide, in one sense, they provide trivial services to us, but they're also providing the fabric on which civilized society is running now, and yet they're owned by foreign well, it doesn't matter if they're foreign, but they're owned by companies that exist to make a profit. And I'm not sure that that's good for.
But does it cost you to?
No, because you can. Depends how you use it. But almost, in fact, every way of using TiddlyWiki is free.
Is it for you to run it? Does it cost?
No, it doesn't cost me anything because.
Jeremy.
No, not as Jeremy, because amazingly, TiddlyWiki, in order to use it, you have to download it. So if you go to TiddlyWiki.com, you're actually visiting a static HTML file on the internet. There's no server there doing complicated, expensive things. It can never crash because it's GitHub hosts it. It's just literally a single HTML file. So the hosting costs for me are essentially, are zero. The cost for you as a user, if you download it and use it on your computer, is zero. And I think that's right, because if you look at people who use TiddlyWiki in anger, the only way to use TiddlyWiki is sort of, people end up running it incredibly wholeheartedly and pouring their whole life into it. This guy is a yes, he's a theoretical physicist, and that is the entirety of his theory of combining gravity and quarks and everything.
That's cool. All the physicists have.
But any of the phrases that you don't understand, you click on them, and then it expands to show you, and that.
That makes it so good and nice, and because it means that people of any level be able to read it.
That's exactly it. So you dive as deeply as you need to. If you already know what an index bracket is, you don't click on it. But then once you've clicked on a few links, it becomes like that's my own version of the walkthrough his story. So say he's a mathematician. There's a guy called, not sure if I'll get this right, Tim Gowers, who's a rather illustrious mathematician in Cambridge. Gosh.
I think this would work really well for like science and like academic.
Yeah. So a lot of, oh, here's a wonderful example I found earlier today, is somebody using it for thesis notes. So I think, again, it's just being really slow.
Yeah, I used workflow for mine and it wasn't fasting. Yeah, I could see this one.
This guy is a philosopher, a French philosopher, best sort of philosopher. And oh dear.
You've got a spelling mistake in it.
Yeah, THE.
No.
It is how it is. Yeah.
Ah, got it. So his thing is fonction et teleology. So I thought that said theology, but teleology is something else. So he's customized it in quite an interesting way, that he's added, here's a new menu of all the authors that he's covering, and if I jump into an author, it shows me the publications they're in, and I guess that's his summary. And then he uses tags in ways that I don't fully understand. And you can see here that we've got quotes. Are they called citations? Quotes from the works. No, those are the quotes. Those are the citations. And it's also split up to, so here's the theories. So the mentalist approach is written, I assume, is written up by this book and this book with these qualities. So
can you just drop those tables in, or do you have to write them?
He would have built all this up bit by bit. So what's... Oh, okay, I see what he's done. So in fact, the way that he's done it so that if ever I add one of these tags is causing those things to appear, I can't easily tell which. But if I get... If I...
Yeah.
Oh, well, he's added...
The latest Gossip Girl.
It
links to the latest Gossip Girl episode.
It does close others, so it when you're on. So at the moment, I've got a whole bunch of things. Oh, I've got 3 things open, and if I press that, all the others close, and I just get that guy open. So this guy, he's done 2 things. He's made his own notebook and kind of designed how he wants it to work. And then he's used it as a notebook by pouring his work into it. And I think that kind of echoes an old... So carpenters, if you were an apprentice carpenter in the olden days, the first thing you used to do was to make your own tools. And you'd make the handle of your hammer, and you'd go and buy a hammerhead, and you'd knock them together. And it was, I think it was thought to be kind of good for the brain to do that. But it also taught people to be kind of self-sufficient in a way that's quite nice. And here, I think this is the exact equivalent.
I could see this as like a 21st century version of books and teasers, and
yes,
because it's more interactive. You see what you want to see. It's more visual. I mean, it's really awful having to read teasers of.
Well, and the thing, it bridges 2 worlds, because as you said, it's sort of. To use this thing is it's like using, you know how to use it because it's a website. I want to search for something, I just type in the search box. So there's stuff that you already know. But the way that you use it is unusual, that it's stored as a file on my local computer. So if I...
so I can't really open it from another computer?
Well, I can actually. I can put it up on a server. So... here's one that I've put up earlier that I put up onto TiddlySpot, and I can do that encrypted or unencrypted. So I can choose whether to do it this guy that we were just looking at before, obviously he's just hosting it on a server unencrypted, but we can choose to encrypt it if we want. But I think the relationship. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Is it behaves like a web application, but it's a file. So James gave me his memory stick, in exactly the same way as he'd give me a couple of Word documents. So you already know how to deal with the TiddlyWiki. You can put it on a hard drive, you can zip it up, you can email it to somebody because it's just a file. But once you get it, it's got all these capabilities. And that reminded me that James has a second wiki.
I think this one's using the kind of wiki things a bit better. So I'm trying to make a game for my friend. It's got quite an unfortunate name. It's a card game. It's got an unfortunate name of being called Shithead. But according to Wikipedia, an alternative name is Palace. So I use that on the wiki.
Okay.
This is how I spent my sixth form playing
Exactly.
a shithead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So is
quite
this
a few.
the rules of shithead? Or?
Not the rules, because I'm trying to program it as a game, a computer
Oh, I
game.
see, yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
And so one thing I really liked is the kind of workflow. So this one that it opened on is my game flow. So I just wanted to put everything in my head down. Yeah, on my narrative, thinking, oh, then it would do this, then it needs to check this. Because when I first started doing it on bits of paper, I became a bit overwhelmed with all this information. How can I plan it and without forgetting things and keeping track? So the first thing I did was basically write out the way the game would flow, and made these links to tiddlers to be completed later. And I kind of marked them. So if it's something for me to think about, I mark it with consideration, like how am I going to handle this bit. And then ones that are marked with are questions from my friend who's like an expert at the game to ask him next time. To summarise.
That's amazing. So, Radhi, the thing I love about this... Reddy, I'm so sorry. Reddy. There's the things that haven't been filled in yet are in italics. And the things that have been filled in non-italics. So, and if I fill in this guy, and I won't be modifying James's real one, but if I fill that in, that drag and drop one now up here has stopped being in italics, and then over here, James gets a list.
As well, because it effectively made
God.
a list for me and a list of questions I could just see.
So now all the questions anywhere in the wiki, so anywhere where he's written question, should I do this, question, should I do that, they're all collected together here, so you can see all the kind of dangling references.
How would you sort of share that easily with someone else? If that was all things to do for somebody else, would you send them a copy of the file so that they could then look at it?
Send them a copy of the file, or I suppose you'd copy
Just copy the text.
Copy and paste that bit, I suppose.
But yeah, I found it a very fast way of working and less overwhelming.
That is, yeah, like I'm organizing a conference, this could make my life so much simpler. Because it's all over the place. I'm the one doing everything, or trying to keep track of everything.
Gosh.
How long have you been using TiddlyWiki for?
Since the last TiddlyWiki meetup.
Oh, so November.
So November.
This is all since November?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, that was my
So you came along without having... Did you know what it was before, or...?
Only vaguely, like I'd seen Jeremy give a presentation.
That's one thing that's really perplexed me, how I get a picture into Tiddler.
Drag and drop. Oh, sorry.
You can go to the Tools menu, over on the right is one way. Click Browse, and then on your iPad you should get a Choose Photo, because the only thing you can insert is...
Wait, say that all again.
Tools on the right hand sidebar. There.
Yeah, Tools.
And then Browse.
Set a choose file. Import.
Oh, Choose File. And then...
Hey! Okay, that was really easy, thank you.
So,
I've been doing things like I've actually managed to import files as media here and then not been able to get to them, and yeah. Oh no.
So can you add an image as a new Tiddler, not as part of?
it's a separate thing, and then
obviously you can link things together anyway. So
exactly, you can. So if I try and drag, there's James's layout sketch. I've just dragged into an empty Tiddler, and I'll give it a better name by taking the JPEG bit off, and then I can close that and say then I put the name of the tiddler in double curly braces, and that does what's called transcluding, which then brings in a copy of that tiddler into that place.
You use square brackets to link, but the curly braces to actually pull it back in.
So is there like a cheat sheet or something, or things you can cheat sheet?
All the documentation is on TiddlyWiki.com, and so the easiest way to find things is just to search. So you search for formatting, then it shows you how to do bold. Search for tags, and it tells you stuff about, well, quite a lot of stuff about tags actually. So in here I was just going to show you how that same, I transcluded an image, but I can transclude text as well. So now, and then if I change the text, it changes. So if you see down there it's saying hello there, but the second I press done, that changes. So if you had a, say if I was writing a novel, I might, this would be a really stupid way of doing it.
No, I've actually told them this is something I've been looking for the murder mystery, because I changed one of the characters' names and I had to go through and change it everywhere.
Treat them like variables,
So
I
that.
go through and put all my names in curly brackets.
So I put protagonists in curly brackets, and now it'll say here's the John blogs. But if I change that to, and then bang, so it's a bit like Excel, the way that you reference one cell inside another cell. Yes, that's one of the. I love Excel because Excel, like TiddlyWiki, people build things out of. People learn it, and you can learn the whole of Excel, and it's a sort of fixed, finite thing. And then
I always find, like, maybe I just don't know enough. I'm just like, God, there's just so much more in Excel.
Actually, mind you, yes, over the last 20 years, it has got ridiculously complicated and confusing and so on. And I mean, I see TiddlyWiki as much simpler in comparison, but obviously, it can feel more complicated to
it's like
begin.
starting with Linux, I suppose, if you're used to Microsoft Word.
Yeah, and you're used to just being able to press Control S and it saves, and things in TiddlyWiki tend to be a bit different. And sometimes, well, you'd be the one to answer this, but I mean, it seems as though
you have more control.
Yes, ultimately, so things aren't different to be difficult. They're different because we purposefully are trying to do something that Word can't do, and trying to solve, the problems when information overwhelms one's brain, where Word doesn't help. So, gosh, well, you've seen a couple of very random bits.
So did you create this yourself? I mean, what was the reason? Like, how did you end up creating TiddlyWiki?
I've always been interested in this kind of topic of how you keep track of stuff in your head, and how you can kind of transfer that into a computer in a way that makes you feel smarter. So often introducing a computer to me or to anybody can make you feel stupider. And user interface designers say that the objective of people using computers is to not mess up. That there's a kind of terrible penalty for things not working as you expect. And so TiddlyWiki says it doesn't place ease of use above everything else. It places flexibility, and it kind of treats you as an adult. It says, look, here's all these amazing things you can do with this tool. The price for it is that you need to learn a little about how it works. But most of what you need to learn, you've already learned. Is this structure, the thing of we cut information up into chunks, we have links between them, we use tags to structure, and then we can do searching. But it's the customization that really gets. So over here, there's that menu, different things. Let's say if I wanted to add my new menu, I just do this. Then it's added an extra tab onto the end with the content of that tiddler. So I gave it a special tag, and it's gobbledygook, unashamedly gobbledygook. But by giving it that special tag, I changed from writing the text, in the middle of a Word document, into changing the layout of the toolbar. And it goes back to this idea that we think that tools are better and more productive if they fit around your brain, if you can adapt them. And by making it so that you can do that without being a programmer, the idea is that all because this, changing the contents of a web page is the kind of thing that people who work on web development, we take for granted, but actually it's really hard if you're not a web developer to do that kind of thing. So let me show you one.
When you close something and save it, does it remember that's closed? So to define the initial open tiddlers?
At the moment, it does a slightly confusing thing. This wiki here, I've got it set up so that when I refresh it, the same tiddlers reopen. But what it by default, it opens the list of tiddlers that you specify here. But again,
tag, is it?
That list thing is, it's gobbledygook that makes it show the current list. But I could have just done.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Just done a list of tiddlers. So the default one here. Just got getting started on it. So I was just going to show you this guy because this is an old, I think this is mostly 4 or 5 years old, but this is a collection done by an American guy who's a missionary in Mexico City, and he's collected together lots of different usages of TiddlyWiki, and so each of these is that's the original TiddlyWiki itself, but these are guides that people have done to TiddlyWiki, and then as you scroll down, people using it for particular things, a German TiddlyWiki manual, something in Dutch, lots of places where you can go to get extra bits for TiddlyWiki. And then, this is the bit I mentioned about getting things done. So Monkey GTD is one way of getting things done. CogniWiki is another. TiddlyDo2 is another. So all this is managing your personal to-do list.
I see. Okay.
And GTD says that it's off-putting if you have a big long list, and so instead the list that you see should depend on the context that you're in. So there's no good showing you tasks you can only do at work when you're at home, and vice versa. But so look, this is a primitive skills group that make fire and keep their records on TiddlyWiki, and there's a church in Texas. So the thing that's crazy about it is this diversity, that each of these things, they represent radically different uses. There's somebody doing weightlifting training. Here's somebody doing healthcare. That's Dickon, who was here last week. Bible studies again. Somebody doing auditory physics. Somebody doing philosophy. So kind of vast breadth. And when you look at them, they're all different. So TiddlyWiki to this enormous audience, instead of just being one product that everybody uses, each group can adapt it to their own needs. And frequently you'll see similarities where one guy, people have shared, they've adapted TiddlyWiki, customized it, and then they've shared it with everybody else in the community. And that's kind of, Facebook is not like that. When Facebook changes, it changes for everybody, and we all whinge and complain. And you're never going to look over a friend's shoulder and see a better Facebook, or see a Facebook feature that you haven't, that you don't have.
Actually, I know friends who've done that.
Manual about TiddlyWiki.
In German.
In German.
Is that the German word for handbook?
Jeremy, is there a quick way to drag all my hitlist from one version to another?
Yes, drag the file, drag the HTML file. As long as
Sorry,
there's nothing
I think
encrypted.
I'll have to go now.
Well, sadly, I think we should let poor Ben, whose office this is, have his freedom as well. So,
Can we quickly talk about TiddlySpace? Because I still don't quite understand.
so yes, we didn't do TiddlySpace, but
Well,
Will's TiddlyWiki is on TiddlySpace. So TiddlySpace is a hosting service, a bit like Blogspot or Tumblr or something, where you can put a TiddlyWiki and then work on it online. And TiddlySpace is probably actually the quickest way to get up and running. It's what Will was using, isn't it? Yes. You got anything to show me?
Not me, unfortunately, no.
So, well, we should wind up, but I'll be hoping to have another one of these in February, and so we'll be in touch. I think I have your email address from the invite, so I'll make sure I drop your line. And there's a discussion group that if you'd like to join, that'll bring you all of the emails and so on. But that's brilliant. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks very much for coming. I'm sorry it's such a miserable night for it.
It's a bit better now.
Yeah. Well, I fear if it hadn't been fierce rain, we might have got one or two more people. So that's brilliant.
No, I'm glad I came.
Thank you.